For those of you who were at dinner last night, you will have heard some of the impressive biographical information about our next speaker, Kiran Bedi. She has achieved both fame and notoriety. Whether in equal measures, I'm not sure, nor will I even attempt to make a guess. You either like her or loathe her, but you can't ignore her. And that's been the history of her career and her personal life. She's as the first and only senior police woman in the country. She excelled at that. And to the uninformed, it remains a mystery to this day why she did not achieve the ultimate recognition of police commissioner in that country. Her transformation in the culture of the prison service during her time running Tihar Jail, which I understand is one of the largest jails in the hemisphere, is also well known and is legendary. Her charitable NGO is recognized and renowned. I first came to know her when she was the guest of the Adelaide International Film Festival a couple of years ago, when her documentary, Yes, Madam Sir, was featured at a screening as one of the major films screened at that film festival. I had the pleasure then of hosting a lunch for Kiran, at which I assembled a group of perhaps the highest profile and well-regarded and well-respected women in South Australia, ranging from the judiciary, from the corporate boardrooms, to the directors and academia. I have to say, none of us had been exposed to a person of this character at that lunch, but to this day, many of those women who are at that lunch are constantly asking me, as if I am in contact with Kiran every day, how she is, what is she doing, and that's the impression that she made on these people. And I have to actually tell them, I really don't know, because I don't read the news in India, so I don't know. But I was in India a couple of weeks ago when the Prime Minister was there, and one couldn't help but know what Kiran Bedi was doing if you turned on the television or you read the newspapers. So as I say, she's been described as an icon. I think that's an understatement for the kind of person she is and the impression she's making in her country at the moment. Kiran, can I invite you to come up to the stage? You can come and stand close to me and I can bask in some of that applause.
Thank you.
Just before she's going to give her address this afternoon, I think you're going to play a little clip.
Not me. Dr. Mattu.
Trailer? Oh, then I'm ahead of you. I've seen it. So, go ahead.
You've seen the film. I have. That's the trailer. It's being made by an Australian called Megan Donovan. She's here. No, she's not here today.
police force in the 70s, and she's made waves and enemies.
When she qualified in the police service, all hell broke loose.
Towed away Indira Gandhi's car. That was a bit cheeky, wasn't it?
All the brave young men noticed there was a braver girl. And this is dangerous.
She is curing later. When I changed the face of the prison, they were jealous. When I exposed corruption in the police, I embarrassed them.
There is an unholy nexus between police, politicians, and criminals.
These are powerful people, and there's a high price for going against them. I had to learn not to trust most of my seniors, and certainly never my peers.
You know, most of your seniors colleagues would like to see you buried 200 feet below.
My enemies would love to see me fail, and instead, I emerged with international acclaim. Work has been my priority, and my family just got as much as I thought they needed. This is getting a little too much.
What were you doing chasing a mob single-handedly in the middle of Delhi?
Very scary. It's very difficult to live with it.
Why? What did I do?
What haven't you done?
She's very strong, very courageous, very naive. She does have a temper. She's everything. It's all given me.
That's the movie. Beginning by thanking Dr. Mattu. I don't know why he called me. You got to tell me why you invited me one day. No. I think it's what's happened in the last 2 years in my career, post-career, I think has been the reason. And it just happened by accident when I became a follower of Anna's movement against corruption. It was not against anyone. We're still against no one. We just want an ombudsman. Basically, that was the whole thing, to get an ombudsman in India. So that's how it all started. And it started with the implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. So I'll come to that in the Q&A, but let me now show you a very hard-hitting presentation. It's not of my making. Last 2 years, because I got involved into this anti-corruption movement, I started to follow politics. I wasn't a follower of politics. I was a police officer, very focused in my work. But I was dealing with politicians as they came in my career as it is. But most of my time went into very focused work. I had good politicians and I had bad politicians. I had my own mixture. But last 2 years, we came face to face with them. And that's the time when I started to look at them a little more closely and understand them and what's going wrong, why. And I started to retain, I have a habit of documentation. And every time I would read in the morning my newspapers, anything concerning subjects as wide as they would be in this national movement, I start to keep my own clipping record. So friends, this hard-hitting presentation is not a product of the last 1 week to make it here to Dr. Mattu's event. It is actually an assembly of what I assembled last 2 years. It's not of my making, it's the way it was. So therefore, I apologize if it's going to hurt anyone. It's not here to hurt anyone's sentiments. As I said, our objective is to get the Lokpal bill, get the ombudsman, the Lokpal at the center, and get the right Lok Ayukts in the states. So that's it. I would say I have great respect. I'm a neutral, non-political, non-partisan person. That's me by my police training. So here I want to show you quickly, get going in the presentation. I'm going to move very fast because we would like to have a lot of Q&A. So I'm going to make a quick 20-minute presentation, finish it in 20 minutes so that we can have a lot of time in the Q&A. Look at the challenges of India. India's world largest democracy. Look at its parliamentary constituencies. 543. Assemblies, look at the number. Look at the number of registered political parties and look at the number of villages. That's India's largest democracy challenge. India produces, by the way, one Australia every year. Every year. So we can come to you every year. So this is the challenge of the world's largest democracy. Look at the number of voters we have. 714 million. Look at the number of polling stations. I can't even count them. 1 million women in rural areas as rural leadership, heading 1/3 of every panchayat. That's the scale of grassroots leadership and of the electorate and the elected. Look at the scale of India's electorate, my friends. You can have entire Europe with you, even then you're more. You can have entire North and South America, even then you're more. That's the challenge of the Indian electorate. Out of the population of 1 point something, you got 728 million voters, who would be now going to vote in 2013 if the elections are announced earlier, right? And if it isn't, then 2014. We have the Congress spokesman sitting right here, only to watch what I say. He told me off the record that he's been sent by the Congress party to watch what I say. But when I said he's looking very handsome, he forgave me for that. So friends, here is this depiction of people's perception of the political parties today. This is the perception. I want to give you the perception. It's not my creation. As I said, I wish I had choices, but the perception did not give me choices. So it's coming through the eyes of the media, because that's what I read every day, and it's an assembly of that. This is the way I want to begin. India is a huge VIP culture. Isn't it? It's till we vote for them, it is we the people. After we finish voting for them, it's who the people. My second slide. That's the way the perception is, of the public perception. A politician, well, we always have very honorable exceptions, so it's not including everybody, with great good exceptions. A politician, as reported, is seen and perceived, is seen as desperate, generally cunning, often ruthless, and he probably doesn't even know himself. That's the way it's being reported. Look at this. India's democratic principles as the media is reporting. Let me get my slide. Yeah. What is this slide saying? What is it saying? That India lacks mechanism for selecting the best person for the best job, for the most responsible job. It lacks a mechanism in the political sphere. Many times, you may be an exception. Many times he's from the IMM professor. He was picked up by the Yadavs for Uttar Pradesh election, but I think you're a total exception. I don't know whether you're going to make the difference by just being one. That's right. So lack of mechanism for selecting the best person for the job, for the most responsible. Many times, it's an emotional selection. It's an emotional selection. The husband has died, the daughter has died, or the father-in-law has died, and it's an emotional selection because somebody's died in the family. Leaders in politics grow up by default in India. It's not we have no grooming schools so far. So friends, great scope for political leadership grooming schools. Train the trainer. Train the trainer. So we have an absence of meritocratic evaluation system. We have no evaluation system. We wait for 5 years and public memory being short. This is what the slide is saying. Hence, charisma follows. So we vote for the brand. It could be any brand. We vote for a brand. Brand, whatever reasons it may have come for. And we also have a caste and a faith followership. We know the caste or we have a faith followership. And neither still does not, nothing. Therefore, the large number of voters do not understand yet the power of democracy. They don't. And that's what this movement has realized as we got closer. And that's what it is. Now, look at this slide. Who's that? It's not my design. It's a cartoon. Nobody's challenged it. It's not been defamation. You see the president of the ruling party, you have the prime minister, and you have this gentleman who's in the suit, was then the finance minister, who's India's president. And I'm telling you, this is it. It's a high command culture. Look at the next one. Why do dynasties flourish? This slide indicates that it's historical, by the way. India has been a land of rajas, so there is dynasty in our blood. So it's not unique to India, by the way. You have the Kennedys, you have the Clintons, you have the Bushes, and you also have a lot of them from South Asia. You have it in Pakistan, you have it in Sri Lanka, you have it in Bangladesh. So this is historical. So there is a dynastic flourish. We don't have any primaries in India. We want primaries, but there are no primaries. And therefore, it's consistent decline as it's been in a democracy. We have a concept of high command, as I showed you, and sometimes it's absence of even credible choices. And some of them are even former royals. We also still have the rajas. We have a politics of inheritance. Look at the titles which are coming every day into editorials and newspapers. And these are written by intellectuals. They're written by very intelligent people. What does this say? It says there's the voters almost are peasants and the aristocrats, the common man versus the elite. So he chooses between elites, but himself can never become one. Democracy is therefore reduced to some form of feudalism with no recall. In 5 years, they become self-perpetuating dynasties. Just a fact. It's all proven. Look at this. Who is this? Who is this? They rarely speak. Both rarely speak. And when one of them speaks, only reads a written speech. And the other one selectively speaks. But they speak absolutely minimal. And in fact, the media keeps asking, what do they say? What do they think? What do we know? We still do not know what is in their mind. This young man is expected to be leading the party next year. But we still do not know. The country does not know what is in his mind as far as policy is concerned. I can't be proven wrong because we don't know. Even you don't know, sir. I bet. Look at this. I'm not writing this. Up to 40 times richer. Some of them are 42 times richer. This is hard facts published in the papers. How some of the members of the Legislative Assembly or the MPs are so many times richer. In fact, it's considered that investment into politics is the best investment in India. Look at this. How did this political class, since I've already given you this evidence, this is evidence. It's not my perception. This is evidence. And this is actual figures. And they filed these figures before the Election Commission. So how did they do? How did the political class, therefore, get to this stage? Because where does this money come from? Number one, declaration of their assets, my friends, as candidates is a ritual. It has a lack of effective mechanism to investigate. Nothing before or after is under any search department in India. The Indian Penal Code, which is written in 1860, and the Criminal Procedure Code, which we are still following, the British made 1895, were enacted when there were no ministers. And sanctions hold them back, because every time you have to prosecute them, you need the sanction. Who will give you the sanction? The sanction never comes. And there's such a cat and mouse story always on the sanction. So look at this slide. 2011 polls, every third MLA is a crorepati. It would be a millionaire. Some of them may be even billionaires. So money, what happens? Money has been used to buy votes. In India, it's a known thing where money, power makes it to buy votes. And that's why they need money, because they've got to buy votes. Well, all can't be bought, but there is rampant information available where votes are bought. Association of the Democratic Reforms puts up on the websites, but nothing happens. Our ADR as an NGO puts it, but nothing happens. Politics in India, for some, has been, as I said, the best investment, better than gold or the banking. So here is another piece. What is it saying? You have rich MPs and you have poor voters. So while they get richer, peasants remain poorer. They come with the subsidized schemes, which are hugely leaking. 100,000 crore schemes, which are very, very heavily subsidized schemes, but they leak. And I don't wish to mention the states, but they leak. And the leak is not plugged at all. So all this leakage of 100,000 crores happens. I can bring you evidence, but you can go on the websites and you'll get. There are large number of schemes, which is employment schemes, which is Grameen development schemes, but they leak. So in some of the schemes, hardly 10% goes back to the people. So there's a vested interest. Politics, therefore, has a vested interest in the continuity of poverty. That's what it says. And this has been written by a very well-respected journalist called Minhas Merchant. And he doesn't do anything without research. Look at this one, friends. This is amazing. That would delight you. This is a case for a human ATM. This is a human ATM. Whose picture is it? Can you anybody recognize? I don't wish to mention the name. Friends, such acquisition dwarfs the contribution of other people in society. It dwarfs it. Other contributions are just dwarfed. And do you know, this state to which this lady was the chief minister is the poorest, one of the poorest states in India. And if it was a country by itself, it would have been the 6th largest country in the world. After, 5th or 6th? 5th. It's after USA, China, Canada, India, and Brazil. This would have been the largest country in the world. Imagine. And here is it, a human ATM. And what is around her? It's money. Correct. It's power of money. Energy. See, he knows it. Because he's from the opposition party. He says they use this photograph quite a lot. So I'm not off the mark. So when it comes to your party, will you support me still? Okay, good. So friends, here it is. Thank you, sir. We are supporting India. When we support the movement, we support the country. You don't support any. Our movement is not a monopoly. So here is it, the next slide. So next slide is here. What is this? Do you recognize this? This is a statue. These are in the same city, same state, you had statues made instead of hospitals and universities. And India needs straightaway 1 million schools. It's short of today 1 million schools. India has, as far as vocational training, you're talking about vocational training, India has only 5,000 vocational schools, 5,000 ITIs. India and China has 500,000. Why would China not be better in trillions in GDP? Ours is 4 trillion and theirs is 13 trillion. So this is where we have 400 universities. Japan has 4,000 universities. And yet we spend our money on these statues. And the key point is, it's with the purse. See that? So friends, look at this. Oh, you know it better. She says the purse had Gucci on it. Right. See how closely the opposition watches these things. Here is it. The voter today is a consumer. Look at that. The voter is a consumer. This is written by Amrit Lal, another very regular, very respected writer. So the voter is facing competitive welfareism today at the cost of the state exchequer. Subverts the relationship between government and citizens. This is to avoid debates. It's like, no debate. Here is a computer for you. Here is a sari for you. Here is a bottle of liquor for you. And here is a laptop for you. That's what you did. Yeah. He's still doing it. But it comes out of state exchequer. And it comes before the elections. If it was really a rule of law, this would have been barred. Because this would have been influencing your voters. This would have been barred. But it is not barred. It's accepted. And there is no budget for it because the party does not yet. It goes out of the state exchequer. So therefore, it's unbudgeted state exchequer, and yet after that, the state exchequer regularizes it. I think if I were the chief secretary of a state, I would have said, sorry, there was no money for it. You do it out of party funds if you wish, but there's no money budgeted. How can you spend it out of state exchequer? But friends, today the voter is treated as a consumer. That's it. So what do we happen? You see some in the DMK, with Tamil Nadu elections, some came in cars to pick up free televisions. This is what happened in the Tamil Nadu prison, last assembly. Look at the next one. Now, from consumer, voter as a consumer, look at the way politicians are grabbing prime land. Last 20 years, rules have been kept changing, and Comptroller and Auditor General has been reporting these, but to no avail. Because it just goes to PSC, and PSC goes on, it goes to the parliament, the CBI's control of the ruling party, or the state is under the state police is under the ruling party. You have no investigations. They keep grabbing prime land. So what happens? There's a nexus between a politician, policeman, builder, and the bhai-bhai. They're all bhai-bhais, which is why they're all brothers in arms, including my community of the police, because they too get the benefit. So but all three need each other, so they all become bhai-bhai. Underworld, therefore, whenever their tenant rules, like in Mumbai, they changed the tenant rules, and therefore they needed the muscle men now to throw out the tenants. So usually they come up with rules so that they can, and all these three can actually work in cohorts. Now we come to criminality. From money power to a nexus to criminality. Look at the state of India. As of now, a candidate convicted in a case with a sentence up to 2 years can still contest polls pending an appeal. So all he has to do is pass and get an appeal, and he's still there. He could be a candidate. In India, 1/3 of the 153 members of the parliament, or 1/3, have criminal cases pending. 74 of them face serious criminal charges, which include robbery and murder. And this includes both major parties. They share it. This is according to the Association of Democratic Reforms. And who said it? She said it herself as a president of the ruling party. Bar criminals from fighting polls. But who gives them the tickets? The tickets are given by the parties themselves. So if they won't give them the tickets, they won't be there. But that's the fact of the matter. Look at this. Auditing is impossible. There is no auditing. The Election Commission does not have the mandatory requirement submission of annual audited profit and loss accounts. The Election Commission cannot demand it. It's not mandatory. You may not. And if you don't get deregistered. Balance sheets hide more than they reveal. Total incomes and expenditures do not total up. Political parties like businessmen tend to exploit the structural lacunae. Political corruption is coming from allocations of natural resources like mining, power shortages, water, spectrum sales, etc. Election Commission has no power to deregister. Politics exploits the voter vulnerability, poverty, illiteracy, caste, religion, and region. That's how it goes. The cost of misgovernance. Look at the cost of misgovernance. Okay, there's one slide missing, doesn't matter. The cost of misgovernance, friends, is annual GDP, which has been falling. I've noticed the corruption has been costing the GDP at least 2 to 3%, which means millions of jobs. So graft is hurting India. Graft is hurting, as I already told you. Look at this percentage. Is corruption hurting India? 90.7% said yes. This was the cost of misgovernance I already talked to you about. Why does politics kill development? Look at these. When it becomes a case of democracy funded by corruption. No politician is an activist. It's an activism. There are, of course, exceptions. But as a politician to be an activist, and then also finding elections, there are few. You can count them on your fingertips. So leakages in funded schemes have pickings for politicians. Parties need a funding route other than corruption, and these are the leakages. See this? Do you recognize this aircraft? Do you recognize this aircraft? Air India doesn't fly here. It doesn't, no? I was looking for it. But you see how the money is fed and flies out? This is yet to be investigated. In fact, one day it would. One day this will get investigated. But the Comptroller and Auditor General has already adversely commented on it. So India also has geriatric power. We're very, very senior. India as a democracy is the oldest head of government and oldest ministerial cabinet among the 15 of the largest economies in the world. It's shown a small dip in the recent cabinet shuffle where you got a few of them. So the figure changes. It was while I was on the flight when all this was happening. A nearing average age. So while Dr. Manmohan Singh is nearing 80, average age of the Indian is 25.9, and the cabinet is about 64.4. It may be 63 now with the few new inductees. And therefore, they're very, very risk averse. People are already talking about youth reservation in India. Friends, there's been an eclipse of parliament. And there is, in fact, even eclipse of state assemblies. So gradually more power has gone to the regulatory commissions, which houses retired civil servants. Same retired civil servants who did nothing courageous while in service, now they go into regulatory commissions. And so because the whole system has become so complex technologically that the members of the parliament or the legislators have to depend on this kind of expertise, and the expertise is still continuity of the same conservatism. Hence, disruption is the route for publicity and to stay relevant. So we have disrupted assemblies and disrupted parliament. Read this, is very interesting. He says, as a former constitutional authority, I'm entitled to a mansion, security, free travel. But what about afterlife? He's walking out of the parliament, says, what about even afterlife? Afterlife bhi nahi hai kya? Kamal hai. So politicians in India actually are out of touch, like they're looking for the victim. And you know what? You see them blaming oil prices, environment, global warming, economy collapse in America, etc., and terrorism on the border. So always looking for the next victim, for the victim. This is how it's coming. Save politics from the Neta. Who, sir? Yes, he's right. So let him know. He was right here today. And he said it. This is how he expanded it so well. And let me tell you what he said it. He says, today the word politics and politicians in India are in trouble. Politics, no fixed rules, only fixed goals. No fixed rules, only fixed goals. And the goals are somehow to grab the chair and stay put. It's now about winning and not winning hearts and minds of the people. Self-respecting are battered. Their self-respect is battered, but self-advancement assured. And they totally become agents. First things, these people, when they come into politics, is they lose their autonomy. This is very interesting. This politician fell off the banana peel, and he told him, you will hereafter eat bananas without the peels. So unpeel them, because and the common man says, you are on roll, sir. There's a politician who fell off the banana peels of the ordinary citizen. So it's been a year of protests. Why would it not be? Thank God we woke up. Thank God we woke up, and some of us got our self-respect. God felt that our self-respect has been hurt and we're being taken for a ride. So it was a year of protests. We'll come to that as we get into the Q&A. But it was a year of protests. And see here is what is happening when it was a year of protests. Do you recognize this lady? Do you recognize her? Good. That's what was happening in some states. All democracy. So this is where Anna came in. 2 years ago, October, we will talk about it, how we want. So basically, in India, all democracy is delegated, but not accountable. You vote, and it's delegated to we the people. And then we the people start saying, now that we have the vote, we are the ones who are your spokesmen. You voted for us. We're sitting in the assembly and deciding for you. You wait for 5 years now. So it's no accountability. There's no recall. Not that we want a recall or not. That's a whole matter of debate, but it's delegated. No system of yearly appraisals. We have no published, nothing. They're only expensive paid advertisements, but there is no yearly appraisal. The real need is day-to-day democracy. Issue is intention and credibility. But this is one of the views of restoring public confidence. I thought I'll show you a slide which we were having in Anna Hazare's movement. So we have an argumentative nation. I thought it will fit your subject completely. And it says, and who's written this? This is Sunil Kalnani. He says we need to create formal debate areas for reasoned debate. And you know, the only debates we really have are shouting debates, where you and we shout each other. We all actually have debates only on television, but we don't have debates in the parliament because the parliament is not functioning. So that's where we are. the way forward? Since you said way forward, here is a way forward which just is about, I was flying, and here's this gentleman who wrote this piece just on the eve of my departure, and I thought it fitted beautifully. The way forward, my friends, is movements to educate voter awareness for day-to-day democracy, which we are doing, which you can all step in and join in as an NRI movement. You can all. The entire student community, the entire non-resident Indian community of millions around the country should become a pressure group and let the government know we want an independent ombudsman. So a day-to-day democracy. Second, we're looking for participative democracy. We want a day-to-day participative where the local MLA, when he is voting for a particular law, he discusses it with his people and not reads a speech from a distance. He does town hall meetings. That's town hall saying, I'm not by a party whip, because here there's a party whip. So it goes against even the interest. At least inform people, this is the new law which I'm bringing about. What do you think about it? And take those amendments to the party presidents. Participative democracy, accountable democracy, and a right to reject. If you're going to have these people with all the money and the criminality, you need electoral reform for right to reject. By the way, it is already there. It's not on the machine. You can sign up a paper and say none of the above. It exists as a Rule 49.0. So transparent, audited expenses, as I mentioned. Get out of VIP culture and share the inadequacies. Civil and public debates, take the calls. The Lok Sabha television should take calls. This is what Ajay Maken did. Ajay Maken, when he came up with the sports bill, he came up on the television. And he's a very well-known, very respected sports minister. He took calls. He came on the television, and he came up on the debates, and he discussed the sports bill, which is pending still. But the point is, he came. So some people can do it. Why can't everybody else? So we're looking for ombudsman with just fast track, need a 365-degree code of conduct for the political class, and we need them here. We need to, whose article is this, which is beautiful. This is, do you know whose? Deepak Chopra's. He says, redefine power. Redefine power. Power should mean service, with values, not position of exploitation or self-survival, but sacred. Redefine power in India, and power must mean authentic, genuine service. Only then, he says, will India prevent itself from becoming a gigantic banana republic in the grip of a tiny elite. A tiny elite and a big, gigantic banana republic. So what we really need, as Deepak Chopra says, is a collective consciousness to what society believes in and deserves. And that's what Gandhiji said. The future depends on what you do today. And what do we do today? We all become one solid NRI powerhouse. One solid power, and friends of India, we all get together and tell the government in power that before you vote out for the next elections, leave an independent ombudsman back with the people. Otherwise, we will not vote for you. We will not vote for you. We shall vote only for that political party, whether it's the party in power, whether the party in opposition. You want our vote? Commit to us electoral reforms, police reforms, administrative reforms, judicial reforms, even economic reforms, because you haven't done your homework last 64 years. But we've woken up now, and that's what the movement is all about. That's what we can do, and that's another higher purpose of my coming here, thanks to Dr. Mattu's invitation, is I am connecting the non-resident Indians in Australia and around the world, and making them connected with a website where you will get Google alerts of what we're doing, where we are, and that is how you create a pressure group. So whenever any minister comes here, first ask him these difficult questions. Whenever a minister comes saying, while we talk business, talk integrity. We want an honest India campaign. So we are not for anti-corruption. We are here for an honest India campaign. And I can tell you the moment India becomes honest, India could be one of the richest countries in the world. Because the amount of money we lose in corruption, is mind-boggling. mind-boggling, and imagine the amount of money we've lost, billions of dollars every year, and it's over the years, and our money is stashed away somewhere overseas. If all that money comes back, we got everything. We got all our infrastructure, we have all our debts cleared, and we may even become income tax free. Then Australians may like to come to India, rather India coming to Australia. Thank you very much.
I thought this was going to be a dull session.
Dull? Not a dull moment.
I've chaired many sessions in my time, but I've never chaired one I've never chaired a session quite as powerful, as passionate, and as provocative as that one is. And we've now got time for questions and answers. Only about 5 minutes. I don't suppose there are any questions, are there? Yep, there's one there.
At one end you said there are 200 political parties in India. Then you jump to dynasties. Are you contradicting yourself? In the same presentation, you said there are 200 political parties in India. Then you jump to political dynasties. Are you contradicting
I'll
yourself?
give you a copy of my presentation. You visit it again.
Your presentation.
No, I'm saying I'll give you a copy of my presentation. Revisit it. You have the answer.
No, you have to answer the question. You are contradicting yourself.
Okay, sorry if I did. Sorry.
Who you are?
So how can we have
No, I'm
200
sorry if I
political
did.
parties
I'm
and
sorry.
then
Okay,
you
you're
have
right.
dynasties?
You're right. I did. Thank you.
So either you remove that slide.
Okay, I will. Removed. Deleted. Delete. Right? I'm done. Next question.
Number 2.
Can anyone who wants to ask a question, would you mind just disclosing who you are and your name and who you are? There's one there.
Argumentative India. Today I didn't do that. Okay, next.
Hello, Dr. Bedi. Thank you very much for an inspirational speech. I'm not very familiar with the political environment in India, but my question is that when you speak of the ombudsman, an independent ombudsman, who will make up this independent ombudsman and how will it work? How will politicians actually be, reporting to them, and how will things become more transparent?
Go to my website, kiranbedi.com. I have a website for you for Lokpal Bill. Please visit it. The key to the Lokpal Bill, which we've been working on, is independent. Just make the Central Bureau of Investigation currently, which is the federal investigating agency, currently under the department personnel reporting to the Prime Minister's office, take it out of the political control to be brought under independently well-equipped independent individuals called the Lokpals. And they don't get re-employed. They've got nothing to do with politics. And like retired judges and activists selected through the search committee, they are non-partisan. And if they also become corrupt, the citizen can take them straight to the Supreme Court. Straight, that's what our Lokpal Bill was proposed. If we do that, that's the crux of the Lokpal. Same ombudsman, instead of being under political oversight, they come under independent oversight, as the FBI's and your Australian ombudsman are.
Over here.
Hi, Kiran, it's Suresh Bhagat from RMIT. Wonderful lecture, no doubt about it. But just wondering why we repeat this history every time for the last 67 years. Isn't the root is in the voters as well? Shouldn't we start to educate the voters?
Yes, it's top down, bottom up. You need to work with the bottom voters, and you also have to have a system in place, both, and take away these freebie systems. And you also have the electoral system which audits them better. So you see, in between we don't have the systems which are missing, which is a vacuum. I hope this presentation is placed on your website, sir, and let it be circulated to people where you can download these pieces.
Just one over there. Just take the microphone and just say who you are.
One argument being propagated by allied group is that ombudsman will control all the three functions like judiciary, parliament and all. So it will become a superpower, and that is wrong for democracy. This is being propagated. What is your comment?
That is why you're rightly saying it's propagation.
We'll just take this last question over here, and then I'm afraid we have to finish off.
Dr. Bedi, first of all, I must say you've energized this group here. And so, two questions. One, how can NRIs vote in Indian elections?
You won't be able to because you're not a pressure group.
No, but
you're not united. Get united. All of you associations get united and ask for, those of you who still have an Indian passport, please get united so that you can cast your vote in the high commissions and the offices and pass a ballot and it could be counted. You're not a pressure group. Who will hear you?
Well,
You're
Mr.
all spread
Nanda
out.
will hear us.
Sorry?
He is our high commissioner.
Yeah, but sir, you got to strengthen his hands.
The second question is, what is the role of the judiciary now? What is the role of the judiciary? Do you find the Supreme Court is actually trying to reverse some of the problems? They do come out with controversial decisions.
Judiciary needs to open up the most. Judiciary needs to become technology savvy the most. Judiciary needs to reform itself the most. So it needs an external reform and it needs an internal reform. But everybody's afraid to talk about it.
That's a very good note to end on the judiciary coming from a barrister. So thank you very much indeed, all of you. Thank you. I didn't even have to ask for that vote of thanks to the Speaker. That's just an indication of the quality of the presentation that you've had this afternoon. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.